Welcome. Glad to have you here today on our Lebanon in Depth show. It's a great day here in Lebanon, as always. So in the summertime, it's just a beautiful place. And today, I'm happy to announce that I have a guest, a special guest for us, which is Colin Smith. And Colin Smith is the chair of our Pedestrian Bicycle Committee. I also have with us Andrew Gast-Bray, our Director of Planning and Zoning. And we're going to talk today because there's been some frequently asked questions lately about the striping, the new striping that's going around Colburn Park on the park streets. And the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee has been instrumental in examining that particularly challenging area of our downtown area. And we have this pilot project going, and I couch everything in terms of a pilot project. It's a chance to look at this in terms of striping. It's very low cost, and to have a pilot program that we can evaluate performance and see if it can tackle the safety that we think is so valuable. And that's, for us, it's valuable for the operators of the vehicles, their passengers, our bicyclists, and our pedestrians. So with that, I want to welcome you, Colin. I always start putting people on the spot by asking a little bit about your background and what you bring to the table in terms of background. Why are you in Lebanon?
Well, so I moved here with my wife about 10 years ago. I work at Resource Systems Group in White River Junction, and I worked for about 15 years in transportation planning. And I've always also been keen on cycling. We live in town as well, so we like walking around town. So we're sort of keen to make sure that things are safe for pedestrians. We've got little kids now, so we're sort of keen on that front as well.
Very well of children and safety with children, and when you can allow a 7-year-old to walk around on their own with this kind of things on. And I know you love bicycling.
That's right.
And that's really wonderful. How'd you end up on this Ped Bike Committee?
It was really through meeting people like David Brooks and Paul Coates, who's the director of recreation. I run a lot with Paul, and just mainly through actually interest in the rail trail. That was the original sort of motivation for that, and got involved in it through that.
Well, we thank you for your service, and thank you for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
We encourage all citizens, carefully monitor the website of the city and look for an opportunity to be involved in conversations. Join some of these committees. People like, we really need people in a variety of different committees. So, thanks again, Colin. To get into our subject, the frequently asked questions about striping at Colburn. Some people have said that the Colburn Park kind of worked fine. But then, so why did we engage in our pilot project for striping? Could you offer some insight about the committee's discussions that led to this?
I think most people, recognize that it always has worked relatively well for cars. There's people have just got used to the way it's been for so long, since probably 40 years it's been the same. So, but from our perspective, it's not really functioned very well for pedestrians, and certainly not for cyclists. It's quite an intimidating space for to try and cross the street with sort of several lanes of cars, or also for to actually try and bike around the green. It's a sort of difficult prospect for anybody but the most sort of confident cyclists.
I noticed it right off the bat when I was here, and I've written in my blog recently as city manager. I write a blog, and I talk about that Colburn Park is my self-described. It's the picture book park. My recruitment was to come here from New York, and on my first visit, getting ready for my interview, I sat in Colburn Park, walked across the park street, and sat on a bench, and called my wife and told her what a wonderful place. This was like a picture book. It happened to be winter at the time, and it felt like Christmas. And I felt it was the place where people like to walk, and they like to bike, and they like to play, and they like to talk to each other, sit on a bench and talk to somebody. So it was a delightful place from my first experience. So I'm really appreciative that the committee has been looking at this. Has this been going on for a while and looking at what Colburn Park and the park streets?
Yeah, it's we've been concerned for a while about the sort of safety issues in the park. Going back a few years, there was a really tragic accident with a fatality, and
So actually, there's been some danger in the park. As to whether the park the park streets around Colburn Park. It all kind of fits together there.
Certainly it's seems it's a relatively safe space for cars because they're not going at highway speeds. But for that, there's a lot. In Lebanon certainly it's the place where there's the most interaction or danger for pedestrians. There's a lot of pedestrian activity trying to go to things like the farmers market.
Because one thing I noticed when I came here, the distance that pedestrians have to cross when I arrived seemed like a fairly long pace to walk across that street to get to the Colburn Park. And I noticed I saw senior citizens. I saw people pushing children in baby carriages. I saw small children crossing on that. And it seemed like a long way compared to what most blocks would be like in terms of city streets. Has that been some pedestrian flow?
Yeah, I mean certainly the long crossings from like in front of the library to the green, and coming across South Park Street. Some of those are very long crossings, and it's a very intimidating and somewhat dangerous prospect for particularly slower moving pedestrians, people like who live maybe in Roger's house. People with small children who take a long time to get across the street. I
notice people try to do the hand stop. If some do, try to get attention of the driver. Over the years, as people observe drivers and their particular behaviors, has there been some just observations by persons that have been working with that area about drivers?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we asked the police department actually to look at the speeds, and they found that generally speeds were relatively kind of within the speed limit, but you certainly get the problems really occur at some of the corners where people can kind of go cut the corners and go very close to where the pedestrians are. So you've got cars moving very quickly and very close to where the pedestrians are trying to get into the street.
And now we have striping, and now we have crosswalks. I have described in the blog there was like 3 dimensions. One where we were really striping lanes. One where we were creating lanes that would be shared lanes between vehicles and bicyclists. And the other aspect was the shortening the pedestrian walks across. So it's really interesting. Now, Andrew, let me join you in the conversation about the plans for Colburn Park. I've heard a lot of concerns being expressed by persons that this is kind of, wow, this has just happened. And then I've heard others going, my gosh, it happened, and it's great. And so I've seen yin and yang on this in terms of the dialogue and conversation. What are the plans? How are we going about planning for this area? How are we going to do this?
Well, Colburn Park, as you said, is sort of the heart of Lebanon. There are a lot of things that we hope to achieve there. I mean, it's our picture book. It's the place where a lot of great activities go on, and so we want to make it welcoming to everyone: cars, pedestrians, bicyclists, activities. And how do we do that? Well, the striping is just part of that. The striping was in order to not make the entire space completely beholden unto the least well-behaving driver, because the driver could cut and swerve and do all of these kinds of things. That made it very scary for a lot of people, and drivers looking over their shoulder instead of looking at the crosswalk in front of them. So we wanted to confine them into lanes. We wanted to slow them down a little bit, and the striping has been successful at that. We have made some places at the crosswalks, the little white hatch marks, are bump outs, painted bump outs, not physical, hard, raised ones, but they're trying to be safe zones so that it shortens the actual distance that a pedestrian has to cross. So meeting those 3 dimensions that you said, and that has been relatively successful. If we are able to do this by containing people in lanes, it's not to say there's not some wonderful things for cars, because eventually we want to get more parking, for instance, around Colburn Park, and other, make it more favorable to more activities downtown. So that's where we want it to go.
Yes.
And so this was just the first step of trying to get it more friendly for everybody. That way we could then invite more people to it.
Yes, because I think one of the vision things of the City Council, in my work and talk with our policy leaders and the direction they've been given, is that we want a sustainable community, and that is translated into the definitional thing of that we want a place where people can really feel the connection with the place, the sense of the place, to experience it in a variety of different ways. The farmers market experience on Thursdays there. There's other possibilities of experiencing And I guess we're kind of opening a door to what that vision was, which was to make it a social space for everyone, and all residents to be able to come and feel comfortable there, and that means they choose to move there, or come there, transport themselves there. Can come from a different ways. I mean, it can come from our transit system. It can come from a vehicle. And in the parking needs, it could come from bicyclists, it could come from pedestrians. So this is kind of a gathering place. This is really kind of the origin of communities, to gather together in a place of being shared values, unity, festivals, art festivals, open markets, opportunities for all to come there. And I know some places have so many multiple festivals, dances, events in an area that we kind of we need to kind of return to that, and that's what we're trying to do, is to return to that occasion where we could all go to the village and meet in the square, and we could have dialogue and things like that. So I think that's kind of the vision thing of the council. Now, there's this word "sharo." Now, the term's been flashed around about flatlanders. Yeah. I am a flatlander. I am from Kansas. I grew up for 25 years in the flattest place ever, and I don't think we ever had a sharo in my life. I know a sharo, a farmer, would be somebody out with a plow making some sort of road. Could you give us a little bit of definition of what that is, and maybe we can debunk that word and turn it into what it really means?
Yeah. Well, so the sharrows, I mean, it's the new markings that are around the green now with the bicycle and the two chevrons. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't indicate a bike lane. It indicates sort of an area of a shared lane that is probably the best place for the cyclist to ride through. So it keeps them a little away from the parked cars, but also a little away from where the main area of the travel lane. It's sort of and it also indicates to drivers that there's, look out for bicyclists. They're going to be
alert
through here.
Alert. It's kind of like when you see a sign saying deer crossing or moose crossing. Yeah. There's bicyclists out here, so and the bicyclists have to be alert because they know there's vehicles that could be in their lane. Yeah. Why don't we do just a straight up bike path? I mean, a bike lane. Yeah. Some people ask me, well, if you did this, why don't you do a straight bike lane? Yeah. And then you'd be clear, or at least we decide we like it or not. But this is kind of funny little mess. Yeah. Why didn't we do a bike lane? Yeah.
Well, there's, the green, going around Colburn Park, there's obviously somewhat complex movements going on. So cyclists need to move over to get around some of the turns, away from where the bike lane might be, and also, just the getting access to the parking. There's cars are going to be kind of crossing what would have been a bike lane a lot. So there's no real, dedicated space for a cyclist. It's really here where cyclists are going to go, but it's not for cyclists only.
Yeah. Also, we were a little concerned about the backing up cars because the visibility of the bicyclists, the blind spot's a lot more significant for a bicyclist. So the ability for the bicyclist to be able to avoid a backing out car was also important to it. Yeah. I should point out that the stripe that's in front of that to set it off was to help confine people to the lane at first, so they didn't just drive right over the top of the Sharo not knowing what the heck it was. But now that people are in the lanes and the speeds are slow, we are going to remove those little dashes right next to the Sharo because it's just 2 lanes. Yeah. So that's kind of important for people to know. It's 2 lanes.
As we kind of reach our conclusion, there's so many more things we could touch on, but Andrew, if you were going to touch on the most major points that the public should have in mind, what would you say? Since we have so many different possibilities, but we're kind of reaching the close.
We're trying to move the park to become more welcoming for everyone, and we've got lots of issues that we're trying to resolve with limited tools. And we don't want to spend a lot of money, but we want to kind of make it better progressively. We are looking for lots of feedback. Had some great feedback from the public already, and I think that people have been in general very patient with the changes because it takes time. You can't wave a wand and have it all just striped just the way you need it at once. So we're moving towards it, and then we'll watch and monitor and analyze it. And so we look forward to continued feedback from the public on how it's working and what we can do to make it better in later phases.
Excellent. Colin, as we close, what would you want the public to have in mind in viewing what's happening here?
Yeah, I think as Andrew said, kind of give us feedback and just kind of share the road around the green, be careful and look out for people. I think that's that's what we're trying to emphasize.
Yeah, it's all about safety here. It's all about, this is a low cost, it is a pilot project. We're having it monitored by you and the public. We really appreciate the feedback. We're also having it monitored within our house by our planning and zoning department, by our public works department, and by our police department. We're in conversation. I have a conversation with all the heads of all those departments. And plus we have our Ped Bike committee who have their regular meetings. You could get the agenda for their meetings on our website. So be sure and watch our Leb City website. You can always contact me and I'll put you right in contact. We have some really fine volunteers and we appreciate their service. We appreciate you members of the public about the situation. We value your opinion however you wish to see from your vantage points. I think it takes a long while to look at how we make this community center what you want it in as residents. So we'd like to hear from you. We're not rushing to judgment on these things. We're very taking a reasonable pace, and we're listeners. So we look forward for your further comments. And thank everybody for joining today. And take a ride around the Colburn Park on the new program, and let us know what you think. Thanks.